Sorry, you cut out there. You say opening statement?
Yeah, just talk about the
Oh,
tournament and we'll take one.
always fun time of the year with holidays. Watching a lot of the men's games last night kind of got us in the spirit of, neutral side events, lots of teams under one roof. I think there's like 12 teams going to be staying in the same hotel. A lot of teams we don't even play. So cool time to hang out, players to meet players from other schools, spend the holidays together. Unique for us this year in that, about half of our roster doesn't traditionally celebrate a Thanksgiving. So getting to understand and explain to them why we're having the festivities that we are. It's kind of neat. Two good opponents for us, really good Oklahoma State team. And then Bowling Green, that's always one of the traditionally powerful mid majors.
All right, Evan.
Yeah, hey coach, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can.
Awesome. I'll kind of start with a fun one. You just mentioned having to explain, Thanksgiving and all of that. I'm curious, do they know about Feast Week? Is that something you're also explaining? How does
Yeah,
this all kind of play into having such a diverse team?
a little bit. Yeah. We were talking about some of the tournaments being in Maui and people going to the Cayman Islands and, telling our kids we've spent the Virgin Islands, places we've been, and places they're going to go in the future for these events. So, yeah, it's neat to just bring it all into perspective for them. Our kids, a number of our kids are just still amazed that you can literally stream any game from across the United States that you want to at any point in time. Yeah, so it's something different every day, man. It is fun. It's refreshing. It makes us understand we do have a lot to be grateful for and thankful for, and to see it through some of these kids' eyes, and then to learn about their traditions a little bit too. Like, what traditions do y'all have that we don't have? And it's always kind of fun to hear, try to explain why we have such a fascination with side. Is that a side or not a side? The arguments that we will have on the plane on which side's the best side. I was on the Chuck and Bo show this morning. I said, my biggest problem with the holiday is I love everything, but I don't like my foods to touch when I eat. So, like, that's a challenge when you only have a certain size plate and so many things to get on it. So, um, it is fun, you can't anticipate it. I mean, it's completely random. You can't plan for a moment. They just seem to happen spontaneously, and it's somebody different. It's somebody unique bringing it up, and it's fun.
That's awesome, coach. In all seriousness, now talking more about basketball,
Yeah,
Oklahoma State, they're a team that beat Oral Roberts a couple of weeks ago. What do you see
yeah.
on them? What's kind of the early scouting report on the Cowgirls?
Well, they're they've got size, they've got speed, they've got depth, they've got everything you look for. They are a little young. They're still putting together their roster as well with a lot of newcomers with a few returners. So I don't think they've played their best basketball. I think they're going to play really good. They've played well at times, really well at times. So dangerous for us. Two big kids around the basket that will present us a challenge. Their guards are very aggressive, very physical, can drive it, can score, play incredibly hard. I think they'll be playing incredibly hard. I don't think their head coach is making the trip. She's about to give a birth, so I think they'll play incredibly hard for whoever scout it is or whoever they're standing up for. That's always a scary time because they play with a little extra step. But when we start to select these events, we can kind of select who we play. Like, we know who we're going to play against. So each tournament has a different pool. So when you're talking to these organizers, one of the big questions is, well, who are we going to play? Who else is going to be there? So I think for where Oklahoma State is in conjunction with where they're at in their league, with where we're at in our league, with where our rosters are at, I think it's a really good matchup. We do have some common opponents, not only with Oral Roberts, but also Fairfield. They played Fairfield in a really close game there. So it'll be good for our kids. They'll be able to look at the film and really be able to figure out how tall somebody is, how fast somebody is, how strong somebody is, because they've played against a common opponent. So that's helpful. These events are fun to go down and play back to back. I'm anxious to see how we respond. We haven't had a back-to-back situation, so we'll see. We got an extra day's rest. We'll travel down tomorrow.
Yeah, coach, last question for you, then I'll turn it over. It seems like almost every sport this fall is playing Oklahoma State, whether that's football, soccer, women's basketball, baseball, softball. Do you have any have you thought about that when it was scheduling, or is this just again another funny coincidence that now we could add women's basketball to the name of sports that are playing Oklahoma State?
It might be a coincidence. I don't know, but I do think it's a little bit of a product of we've had to regionalize games a little bit more. But this one obviously is not a home and home, so we don't really fit in that category. But I do think there's a desire to play against people you know. We went and we try to play a variety of people, but I think at some point you need to challenge yourself with somebody you played AAU basketball with or high school basketball with or against. I do think, and this is something that has been very intentional with women's basketball, to grow the game. We've talked about it at Final Fours. We talk about it in our meetings. We have to be very intentional in how we schedule so that there's some things that are compelling. I think it creates that rivalry, that we are separated by not a very far distance. We get a lot of overlap with media coverage but you're right. Yeah, there seems to be a lot of recent matchups with Cowgirls or Cowboys, I guess, either way.
Awesome. Thanks, Coach. I'll turn it over,
Yep.
Fuller.
Dudley?
Couple of questions. Number one, you called the UCLA thing. Just talk about that game if you had a chance to look over at Eddie, and also once you watched your own film, you said you would know whether you played better, much better, whatever. Just tell me how you thought about that.
Yeah, I don't think I was much of a prognosticator predicting that UCLA was good. That was pretty easy for the general public to pick up. My 4-year-old son predicted that one pretty good. He knew what was coming when he saw the game, but they are very, very good. They're very, very good at home. And it's not surprising that South Carolina, that's a hard trip for South Carolina to go 3 time zones and play an early tip off. I know Dawn was really challenging her team with a hard thing, do a hard thing. And I felt like UCLA had an advantage with it being at home. A neutral site game or in South Carolina, I probably would have had a different opinion, but South Carolina, obviously very, very good, but just how good UCLA is. And it did give me confidence because we got great shots against them like they did. So they made a few more. But to your second part of that question, we did play better. We've got a grading system that's, been used by our staff for a while, and we graded out better at every single spot. Everybody that played had a higher grade versus Arkansas State that they did against Oral Roberts. In the same style of play, in the same physicality, the same pace, the same intensity. So I think I don't think I'm grasping at things to look as a positive here. I think it's evident. We did make improvement in those 2 days in between, and hopefully that helps us next time we run up against an opponent that plays that style. But I thought Vera and Danica made really, really big jumps. Carly Johnson continued to give us valuable minutes. And then our others were very consistent. Izzy and Jenna did their things. Pena came in and had, even though she didn't score and make shots, she had impact on the game. So Kiki Smith continues to be very, very steady for us, somebody that's very reliable and somebody we can count on for lots of things. So we still need to make improvements across the board, but I do think we're making them.
Yeah, and one of the other things, obviously 3-pointers are cool, but made shots inside are cooler, right?
Layups and free throws are 1 and 2. Everybody always talks about us loving the 3, but believe me, I love layups and free throws. We knew there would be an opportunity to get behind their press if we could take advantage of it. I thought Danica and Vera, unbelievable job of being available. Then we had a number of passers that found them against the pressure in the back of that press. We knew we had to convert against the press. If we just broke it, that wasn't good enough. You have to score against it to be effective. And, I thought they had 4 or 5 moments where they looked they did a lot of good things, whether it was the passer or the catcher. And then I think that helps breed confidence and build confidence for when we throw it to them in the half-court offense. And it makes those threes a little easier to make when you don't have two people hanging on you. But those kids work very hard. Coach Nick and Coach JC do an unbelievable job on a daily basis with those 2 guys. And, we're not a finished product, but if you had been here in August, when we started our first workout in August, to see Vera and Danica's development, it's the reason we brought them in, because we know their ceiling's real high. We're not even close to it yet, but we're getting closer.
Appreciate it.
Yes, sir.
Daniel?
Hey, Coach. I mean, we talked We touched on the back-to-back a little bit, the first one for the team, but I'm wondering for a lot of the international players, have they even ever had a, back-to-back? What have you done to maybe explain to them that, hey, you got to flush this one maybe even faster than normal?
Yeah, they have more than we do, Daniel. They play in FIBA, they play daily. Like when you go over there for these FIBA events, they'll have 4 or 5 games in a row. That's so that the people that are making the distance trip to come evaluate, they don't have off days in between. So yeah, I would tell you they're a little bit more accustomed to it, maybe than some of our international, our non-international kids. They do it during the summer where they play, maybe even 2 games a day, but that's different. These guys have played country versus country in games that mean a lot. So they actually may have a little bit more experience at doing it than some of than Jenna or Izzy. Recent experience for sure, because it only happens a couple times a year for us in these events. But yeah, I'm trying to think of any of our players that are international that I have not seen play on. I think I've seen them play back-to-back days.
Okay.
So, yeah, that's a great question, but I think it is. I wouldn't have thought of that answer until you ask it, but they're probably more ready for it than anybody we have.
I guess conversely, is that maybe one of the byproduct appeals of recruiting more international players is that they come
I
in
had
with
not
a
thought
different-
about it that way until you asked that question. That had never entered my mind.
Okay.
But we don't do it a lot, so probably not going to be a big factor for them. But I do think they can maybe talk to our other kids. I can tell you I'm making a note here to make sure my internationals talk to my non-internationals about how you can do it. It's not we're playing basketball, we're playing a sport, and we'll rehab them and we'll spread them out and give them plenty of rest. But I will make sure those kids share their stories because I think they've probably done it more than our non-internationals.
And then I guess does maybe doing the early trip, because not every year you have a long trip before one of these tournaments. It's usually the first one in some years, but you've already been to UCLA as part of the return trip for the home and home. Does that maybe help, prepare you guys for the tournament?
There's no question. We'll have the extra day down there. We won't have a game the first day after we arrive. So dealing with that, dealing with a little bit of free time, making sure you enjoy the sights and the sun in Florida, but not too much. I think we got that out of the way in California. Luckily, we caught California in a record cold streak, so we didn't do much in the sun. But yeah, yes, I think familiarity with kids that got to have a lot of uncertainty around them. I think anything that can be more familiar will certainly be an advantage. We didn't do it necessarily intentionally, but I do think we may reap some rewards from that. And hopefully, I don't think Oklahoma State's played. They may not have even played a road game. I'm not sure. I have to double check that. They may have played a neutral site game, but yeah, hopefully we've gotten used to getting in the hotels and using our pregame meals effectively and using our shoot around times. I think the more, I always use the term at bats. The more at bats we get, we'll be better off down the line.
Appreciate it, Coach.
Yes, sir.
All right, Coach. Thanks.
Yep. All right. Happy holidays.